My name is Bhawnesh Mathur. I have been going to Mexico for 30 years as part of IBM, Sanmina, and other companies. I'm currently a partner in a private equity firm with a company that we have in Mexicali, Mexico. So I'm currently engaged with Mexico. My experience is that Mexico has great leadership, and you will hear from many of these leaders today. They have matured to develop and deliver complex product and services. We'll talk about that as well. And quite frankly, I think Mexico has survived many challenges and has shown itself to be a very strong country. All the border issues, peso issues, SARS, COVID, and whatever. I find that Mexico normally comes out of these things very strong. So that's my experience. I am a strong proponent of Mexico. I'm very pleased to have four people that are far smarter than I am about Mexico to be a part of the panel. I'll ask each one of you to introduce yourself. If you could maybe tell me your current role, what global experience you have, because we know that many of you have worked in and out of Mexico, and finally, the experience that you have in Mexico. So in no particular order, if Javier Valadez, if you're on the phone, perhaps you can give us an introduction, Javier.
Thank you, Bhawnesh. Javier Valadez here. I am currently Director of Operations for Kenworth in Mexico. In the past, I used to work for Audi, the German car manufacturer, when they decided to build a new greenfield project in Mexico as the first premium auto manufacturer in the country. So this drove a lot of investment of whole supply chains, as you were saying. And I'm glad to be here. I'm responsible for customs, supply chain in Mexico, and mainly regulations and lobbying with the government. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Javier. Felipe, I've heard a lot about you. I'd love to learn more about you if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Very glad to be sharing with you in this panel. Well, I'm 5 years ago, I'm the general manager of the Safran Aerosystems facilities in Chihuahua, Mexico, which is five facilities and close to 3,600 employees. Before that, I spent 10 years with Honeywell as vice president of the mechanical division at Honeywell Aerospace. And before of that, I worked in automotive. I worked for Valeo and Toyota Koito. So I spent another 15 years or 12 years in automotive as well, starting several projects and products. And certainly I have a lot of experience both in automotive and aerospace. And this afternoon, I will share some of those experiences and challenges of both industries. Good to be here with you.
Thank you, Felipe. And Eduardo, if you could introduce yourself as well, please.
Sure, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm Eduardo Salcedo. I'm the Director of Operations for Össur Medical, Latin America. We're in Tijuana, Baja California. It's a good case to examine in terms of the technology that we manage. We have applied and won at some point the best place to work in Mexico. So it conjugates a lot of things that to speak of about the state and the capabilities of Mexico and Baja California together. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Great, thank you. I'd like each one of you to think about how you can demonstrate to the audience here the capability in Mexico, how large some of the things that you do are. You mentioned 3,600 people, talented people, Felipe, and what some of the world-class capability that you have, because as Mexico rises in the clusters, the capability will have to be best in the world. So I'd like each one of you to address it, but Felipe, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Well, Safran in Mexico is the #1 employer of the aerospace industry in Mexico, very close to 12,000 employees. And we have locations in Tijuana, Mexicali, Chihuahua, and Querétaro. And in terms of capabilities, basically we have a big electric wire harnesses and switches and processors, electric processors, electronics, things like that. We also have a big machining capabilities, mainly for engines in Querétaro. We have landing systems as well. We have a big machining and metal capabilities. In my operations, in particular in Chihuahua, we have a lot of composite materials, both of carbon-based and fiberglass. We also have lighting and mechanical. We have metal sheeting, forming, basically chemical surface treatment capabilities, sewing, because we do the evacuation systems for in one of our plants. We have a lot of sewing as well there. So it's a very diverse, let's say, capabilities, but certainly all our facilities are world-class. And as I mentioned, Safran is the #2 tier 1 supplier in the world for aerospace industry.
Yeah, that's good to know. I don't think people always get an appreciation for the depth of capability and how large capability you have. Eduardo, when you and I spoke, I know in your business there's a lot of capability in Mexico as well. Please share that with us.
Yeah, very quickly. Össur Medical is a medical device company that manufactures mostly orthopedic devices, but also has prosthetics, active and passive prosthetics, meaning biorobotics, doing most of the components in Mexico. We also share, as my partner just mentioned, a diversity of processes and technology under one roof. In this Mexico facility is the largest facility that Össur has worldwide. Össur is #1 to #4 in every single segment market that we participate on. And it goes from sewing to powder coating to cutting metal with laser beam to metal stamping, vertical injection molding, regular injection molding, pad printing, silkscreen printing, and I can go on and on and on and on. I call it the perfect playground for an engineer. The facility, because any type of manufacturing technology, well, I found one that I didn't find in 25 years in the medical device industry, that I find it for the first time in Össur. It's a laser cutter of textile. And I said, what the hell do you need a laser beam to cut textile, for God's sake? So it's a universal. This is like, I'm pulling the brand here, but why? Because it's such an intricate design that you have to cut in the textile, and you have to cauterize to make sure that you have no threads left. And that just to give you a sense of the diversity that you can find under one roof. It's a 300,000 square feet operation that we have in Tijuana.
Excellent. It's from aerospace to medical. Sergio, I'd like to go to you. You work for a brand that everyone knows, but maybe you can describe what you do and how significant the facility is.
Hi, Sergio Langarika. I work for Sony Electronics. I'm based out of San Diego, but I'm responsible for the Americas region from Canada down to Argentina. I deal with trade strategy and compliance. So I deal with tariffs, trade, free trade agreements, manufacturing incentive programs. And I've had the opportunity to help set up free trade zones in the US, maquila programs in Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Ecuador as examples of countries that we deal with in the region. Our current manufacturing in Mexico right now is third party, where Foxconn purchased our factory. And actually Foxconn has purchased a lot of electronics and IT companies' factories in Mexico. But we've been in Mexico since the 80s. And at one point we had up to 4 factories. Right now, we have all of our televisions, or the majority of our televisions, sold in the Americas come from Tijuana at this point in time. And from Tijuana, we export predominantly to the US and Canada, but also to Central and South America, and even exporting to Brazil and Argentina, where we also have manufacturing facilities for those products. So Mexico is an important hub for the entire Americas region. It's a regional factory, and it's well suited because our North American headquarters is here in San Diego.
Great, thank you, Sergio. Let's move on to you, Javier. You work for Kenworth, completely different industry as well. Tell us more about your unique capabilities.
Definitely. So what we found in Mexico, it's a country that graduates more than 115,000 engineers every year. That's more than double on the number of engineers that graduates in Germany. So this speaks about the capabilities that we can find in Mexico. So we have a big factory in Mexicali, one of our 10 factories around the world, where we make heavy duty trucks. So to give this some context, Mexico is the #1 exporter of heavy duty trucks in the whole world. And with this in mind, we have a big factory in Mexicali that gives employment to 3,400 people in the bordering region of Baja California, next to California. And well, what we do there is many of the processes all the way down from molding up to setting up the engines and then having this special customization that heavy duty trucks industry requires. So we export to the US and Canada. I would say 60% of our product mix goes up to the US and Canada, and perhaps 20% goes to Central and South America, and the rest remains in the country.
Excellent, thank you. I wanted to next ask you all about what did you do when you were starting your business and you found certain capability was missing? I didn't have a chemical supplier or a metal supplier or a harness supplier or whatever that happened to be. Felipe, how did you find people to fill the gaps that you could not fill? Did you bring in other companies? Did you make your own, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I'm gonna share some experience in both in my time in Honeywell and now with Safran. There are some capabilities that there are no existence in Mexico. In the previous presentation, you showed the pyramid where the top is US and the bottom is US and China. And that's some of the problem, especially for aerospace. For example, automotive follow a completely different strategy than aerospace. Automotive, you know, when Ford, GM, Toyota, whoever moves into Mexico, they move at least the critical supply chain with them. Either, you know, Mexican companies, joint venture, or foreign companies that open a satellite facility in Mexico. That was the strategy of supply chain. And as a result, today, the cars made in Mexico have 45 content of Mexican component. Aerospace was a completely different strategy. They didn't move the supply chain. So a situation that we have today is that less than 4% of the content of the different products that we produce in Mexico in aerospace are Mexican content. That means 96% are imported components or foreign components. Most of them from US, some of them from China, as you well presented in the previous presentation. And that is a challenge, because a big difference as well is that the aerospace industry is heavily regulated and focused in product certification. The automotive is heavily focused in processes and is also regulated, but not as much as aerospace. So therefore, you know, to bring new supplies and new suppliers into the supply chain take time and money. Mm-hmm. So in some cases, I'm gonna give you some examples, for example, engineering castings. You know, engineering casting, there's no availability in Mexico. You are forced to import it from US. So yeah, there's practically nobody in Mexico is doing that process capability.
Yep. Yep.
And therefore, you need to start really in aerospace in order to expand your supply base. You need to really engage into a supplier development program where you teach the suppliers that have the technical capabilities. You teach them how to do business in aerospace, which kind of regulations and certification they need to go. And normally what in an automotive takes you 2 or 3 months of certification, in aerospace, you are talking 1 to 2 years. So that's important to understand and how to do business in aerospace, as well as, you know, to do the proper preparation, not only the technical side, also in the management side.
Right. Thank you. That's very helpful. Sergio, is that the way it is in your business, the electronics business, or are there more local suppliers? Are you 4% Mexico content or higher than that?
The content is relatively low. The raw materials or basic ingredients, resistors, capacitors, bare boards, all come from Asia. Many years ago, the strategy was go to Asia and bring the supply chain from Asia to the region. There's always a lot of resistance with regards to just, a capacitor resistor. It's 0.00, 1 cent, and they're commodities basically. They don't have a brand, and so we didn't meet success. We met resistance actually. Plastics, injection molding, metal parts, processes such as those, we were successful in bringing them locally. But what is, if you look at electronics, the main component is always going to be the motherboard or the main board. So Mexico in the electronics sector has predominantly focused on mounting the electronics as opposed to making the ingredients, which are resistors, capacitors, ICs. There was one initiative years ago called Silicon Border in Mexicali, where the objective, especially taking into consideration the security concerns that were mentioned in the presentation earlier, was, can we bring semiconductor manufacturing because of security regions to the region? Those are multi-billion-dollar investments. There's some of those in the US, but there's a strong concentration in countries like Taiwan and Japan, Korea, and now China. And right now it's a really hot topic. And there's not enough. And the question is, can still Mexico bring those ICs? Because that's where a lot of the value in the electronics products exists. So that's a great opportunity for Mexico is with regards to that. But we don't have that yet. That's a big challenge. So we still have a strong reliance predominantly on Asia for the basic components that we produce, and we've not been successful in bringing them. And the question was, should you bother? They're commodities, they're very inexpensive, and in a world of free trade and globalization, it wasn't a security concern, so we stopped asking for that to happen as a country. It's back on the table. Should we be considering? Because even before all of that moved to Asia, much of that was produced in the US. But it went from the US to Asia, and it hasn't come back. The question is, in this new environment, will it start to come back?
Yeah, we have definitely seen the US government do some regulations that is bringing the printer circuit board industry back to the US and really back to North America because of security concerns and continuity of supply and other things. So maybe not ICs, but in the electronics business, if the board comes back, that would solve some of the problems, and that doesn't take as much capital to do as it possibly IC. I want to ask Eduardo and Javier, because Felipe and everyone has mentioned this. What do you feel about the talent in Mexico? Lots of engineers graduating. Javier, you talked about that. How is that working out? Are these engineers able to find jobs? Are they trained? Are they ready to join the workforce, or do they have to be trained after they join the workforce?
I would say what we found in Mexico is with this large number of engineers graduating, we've seen that not only it is a matter of clusterization by industries, but also by methodologies. So we've identified in Mexico how some regions have specialized in American supply chains, Japanese supply chains, German supply chains. And it was really interesting that the work that Avinav, Nora, and Nikki did, because I could see those regions within those maps that they were showing. So what has become very useful for us is there have been some initiatives that started first by the own company's interest, but then adopted by chambers and business associations, where they have implemented a dual education system that sort of standardizes the level of apprentice or the level of quality of the work of these engineers, so that there might be Kenworth or then might be Volkswagen or Sony coming to Mexico and then giving them employment. So this has been the way that these engineers have got an open door to this company. So I would say this has been a very useful initiative so that we can actually tailor-made these recently fresh graduated engineers into our industries and into our specific supply chains. Maybe Eduardo can comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent,
most
thank you.
definitely. Yeah. Just to agree with Javier, basically from the manufacturing end, we've seen that joining forces with the academia, with the local universities too, shaping and creating curricula for the different careers have helped a lot. We're starting to see the fruits of the first generations of biomedical engineering, things to that effect that we didn't have in the past, or at least not as accessible as we do right now. And the other thing is that we have proven the capability to tackle any type of technology, and the diversity of challenges that we have been faced with in terms of adapting production processes is second to none. And I always say, this is my personal take on it, but Tijuana and Baja California is a pretty good example, difficult to replicate in any part of the world, of the diversity of foreign investment that you have. I literally drive on my way from my home to my facility through Japanese, Chinese, French, German, you name it, Mexican, corporate operations and different brands and household names that are right here. What does that have to do with anything? Well, the fact that when I hire somebody from the street or an engineer has been exposed to every single way of thinking about manufacturing. They say, oh, I worked for 2 years for a German company that used to do it this way. And then I move on to Mitsubishi and work for the Japanese for another 2 years, and they used to go about it this way. And so it doesn't stop there. I personally think that also evolves in a person. You cannot help it. One trait that you cannot buy or teach in a university, and that is adaptability. They come to the facility and they're ready to absorb no matter what complexity of technology you throw at them. As long as you provide the right tools and the proper training and education, they'll grasp it immediately. And we have that experience. Just to close my comment, for instance, one of the most advanced technological tools that we have in the facility is 7-axis CNC DMU type of cutters that you don't see, rarely see in the aerospace industry or any other place. And they're being run, they're $1 million a pop. We have 9 of them. And we have Tijuana 20-year-olds running them. So when I get visit from the MIT or people from different universities, they always pull me to the side, and the question is the same. They say, where did you find somebody to run this type of toy? And I really get the joy of saying, oh, he was walking down the street and I pulled him in. I just provide him training for 3 to 6 months with the Japanese and the German designers of this machine. And now they're suggesting how to improve upon the programs that they use to cut off time and to improve cycle time. So, and that's a fact. So the capabilities and the access to qualified hand is proven. It's something that we're beyond questioning.
Yeah, that's an excellent comment. I want to ask you all to answer one last question that I think our time will be up, but you may have answered it, Eduardo, so I'll maybe go back to Felipe and ask him. I think a lot of people today in the world are thinking about Mexico. A lot of people in the US are thinking about Mexico. And if you were to tell somebody that is thinking about moving their supply chain out of the world and into Mexico for the future, Felipe, what is the one thing that you think will be the strength of Mexico in the future as more companies come to Mexico and try to take advantage of everything that's in Mexico? What's the one thing that Mexico will be known for in the next 3 to 5 years that makes it strong?
Yeah, I think, also in the previous presentation, some of the panelists show that. I think there are some obvious things. One is the logistics, location.
Sure. Yeah,
certainly we are in North America. We just sign again the USMCA free trade agreement or the new NAFTA. Certainly what the other panelists mentioned about the very capable technical people available. Any kind of operation with any level of technical complexity, you know, Mexico has the technical engineers and people let's basically used to work in that level of complexity. Relatively easy to do business. Certainly certain promotion setups like the Maquila setup, you know, to facilitate and be in an environment of duty-free, let's say, kind of environment in order to manufacture in Mexico, export to North America and mainly US. I think those are the obvious strengths. You know, that's obvious. Certainly, we have the challenge to develop much further the supply chain. The current suppliers that we have are very small, are not ready to do the jump from be a small company into medium and big company. In Mexico has no very strong financial sector to promote investment, especially industrial development investment. Is very limited if you compare with the what tools, let's say financial tools, do you have in US and you compare with Mexico. And certainly you mentioned that you are in an equity firm, so you should know about it. When you compare what is available in Mexico versus US in terms of financial tools, that's a big gap, let's say. So small companies, small industrial companies that may be very good, technically speaking, you know, they don't have the tools to develop further, to move from be a small company to a medium company and to start supplying OEMs and tier ones, either in automotive or aerospace, because that it requires a lot more finance and a lot more complexity management. Certainly that's, in my opinion, the main weakness. The supply base need support, need development, and certainly the financial side, in my opinion, and the management side to move from small to medium and to be able to manage that complexity. That's the main challenge for the supply base in Mexico.
Yeah, well said. And I think that certainly speaks to partnership between the industrial sector, the businesses that you all represent, and the government sector, and working together, because those other companies have accomplished that by the government working with the industry and doing all the things that need to be done. So thank you for sharing that, Felipe. Sergio, what about you? What do you think is the advantage of coming to Mexico for businesses that are thinking of coming to Mexico in the next 3 to 5 years? What will that advantage be for that company?
Well, obviously we have the Maquila program and we have the free trade agreement. So those we already have, proximity we already have, but we're starting to see more R&D being done in Mexico. And I've seen Mexican companies starting to do engineering design. So Mexico's moving up the value stream, not just manufacturing, but now doing design. But Mexico has also put a very large focus on software. Right? Now the 4th largest exporter of software to the world, and that's key, especially in the world of automation. Yeah. So that is a huge advantage that we're starting to see that will have spillover effects, you know, within Mexico. Many large companies, Hewlett Packard, IBM, in the Guadalajara area, have thousands of engineers now focused on you know, basically writing code, and that's very significant. So it's not just, you know, the manufacturing; it's also the software. And Mexico's also grown tremendously with regards to business process outsourcing. So contact centers, call centers, and services. So in addition to just making the products, we're you know, doing more of the activities, and the proximity with regards to culture and the language helps us tremendously in order to perform those other services. And having that level of complexity in Mexico makes that Mexico that much more attractive. My comments.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you very much. How about Javier, your comment?
Thank you, Bhawnesh. And building on Sergio's comment, I would say from my perspective, there are five factors that give competitiveness to Mexican supply chains, and Mexico has evolved through all of them: cost, quality, speed, flexibility, and reliability. I think Mexico has been evolving through all of them, and we've seen how during the pandemic, how reliable is this North American supply chain and how important it is. As Tom was saying during his presentation, reliability is becoming a key factor for supply chains. What I would add a sixth one, which is the ability to learn and as more artificial intelligence becomes a decisive factor in integrated supply chains, Mexico will continue to add value to supply chains and will continue to be an important destination for consolidating regional supply chains, in this case, North American ones.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Helen says I've got a few more minutes, so I kind of wanted you to think about one other thing. A question that I run into personally, and we talked about this on our pre-call, is I'm new to Mexico and all of this capability is everywhere in Mexico, but I don't know where to go. If I was to call you and said, I need a plating solution, I need to build some castings, I need to do some injection molding. When you were asking those questions, maybe I start with you, Eduardo, this time. How did you answer them, and where would you tell somebody to go today to get answers, to get some knowledge and help about Mexico?
Well, several different choices. You can go to the conglomerates or clusters that we have been talking about, depending on the nature of the industry that you're in. We have the Tijuana EDC that is always welcoming the different governmental instances that can help out with that. There's a lot of help available. And the fact that we're operating as a team, because these conglomerates or these clusters didn't just came about because of luck. We were looking for these associations and now cross-cluster or cross-conglomerate to tie the capabilities and the know-how of the different industries to build bridges throughout what could be common ground. It's what's happening right now. So it's getting much easier. Össur, just to close the comment very quickly, started with what we call a shelter structure in which they subcontract the different functions. They grew on the shelter for a couple of years, then became independent. And that was it. The learning process was expedited because of getting that initial support. So several instances to get help.
Great, very helpful, thank you. Felipe.
I just want to mention I was just the former president of the Mexican Federation of Aerospace Industry, and now I'm part of the board and I'm responsible for the supply chain development. So in this case, we work together with the clusters, aerospace clusters in the different regions, and in the FEMIA, we have a formal program for supply development. So here also in the audience is Luis Liscano, Javier Hurtado, part of the team of FEMIA, and we have a formal process more than 4 years developing the supply base, because what I mentioned, it's a big challenge for aerospace industry to expand, the supply base in Mexico. That's one of our first priorities.
Got it. Okay, great. Sergio, did you want to comment on this?
I do. I was actually, I'm actually a national board member for the Electronics Industry Association and former regional president here in the Northwestern region in the Baja area. And literally for decades, we've been holding annual supplier conferences where we do matchmaking, right? And now at the national level, we've developed a database which identifies all over the country all of the suppliers that exist, and we do matchmaking. So please reach out. Canieti is the name of the organization, canieti.org, and it's National Electronics, IT, and Telecommunications Industry. And we have huge initiatives that we run, annual programs, in order to foster greater integration.
Okay, great, thank you. I see we have a couple of questions. I might take one of these as our last question of the day, and then I will come back and talk about April 28th, because I think we can continue this discussion for longer and in more detail. But the question here is from Ozzy Diaz from the Techno Shelter. The question is, what is the current perception from your corporate offices about the current federal administration? Meaning, are they still comfortable on bringing more business to Mexico? So who would like to answer the question about the current leadership in Mexico and their friendliness to business?
Don't get me going. Don't get me going. So I'm going to pass it on to Javier.
Thank you, Eduardo. I mean, for us, the business is certainly the pandemic has hit all of us, but for Kenworth, the business is thriving. We're committing more investments to the city of Mexicali. We are developing our own supply development programs within the region of Baja and also in California, as we are seeing now this trend of electric vehicles coming in with the Biden administration. And the factory in Mexico is part of this key, I would say the key objective for the next 4 years of the US and in Mexico for PACCAR, which is our holding. So for us, we're comfortable. We are going on the business. The business is running. Luz Maria de la Mora, who would be joining us after our forum, she's been amazing with us. She's had an open doors policy, and she's become our close ally within the federal Ministry of Economy. So we'll keep it going.
Okay, great. Eduardo and Felipe, let's do Eduardo and then we'll do Felipe. Eduardo, you are
very quickly. We cannot complain during the pandemic impact and any federal administration impact that we might be experiencing. We have been working on 3 transfers, 2 from Iceland and 1 from the US at once. So I'm not a good example to say that, oh, it's hurting us, and really the trust that the corporate office is putting on us is not there, because it contradicts what's going on. But I do defend or would like to say that the more that we do efforts to create a regulatory framework that makes the border invisible, the better we all going to be in terms of trade. And I think that's done with work, with education, with trust, and with demonstrated capabilities. And I think that's the underlying subject that is under all this technical discussion in terms of trade agreements and technology and production processes. It's all about getting to know the capabilities that are on each side of the border, communicating and creating bridges to make that border as invisible as possible in terms of sharing wealth and success. And that's what I would say.
Felipe?
Yeah, I want to mention related to that question. One thing that is gotta be clear for all of us is that the rules of engagement have not changed. In other words, the current administration, the current federal administration, was the one that signed the USMCA trade agreement. That means that it's committed to continue with the free trade, with the open investment, and certainly the rules have not changed drastically, let's say, or significantly for all of our companies. And I think I'm speaking for all of the panelists. Of course, one key element of trust is that we work in a real democracy. In other words, in real democracy, we get used to have different opinions and extreme opinions some cases, and the change of government is smooth, and that's what we expect in a democracy. We just saw it in US with Trump and Biden. We just saw it in the most, let's say, strong democracy of the world. So Mexico is no different. If, of course, we have a previous government from the right, and now we have one of the left, but the rules of engagement and the overall policies have not changed significantly. So I think in that regard, that provides a very high level of confidence. And certainly we all prefer to work in a democratic country where the democracy brings the different scopes and the different visions into the government, and that's normally in a democracy.
Completely agree. Sergio, any last comments before I close this out?
we've been operating in Mexico for decades, and the Maquila program goes through the 60s, and we saw the students present the timeline from the 20s. We're in for the long term. So regardless of the short-term noise that we can hear, the reality is that there's significant investment, there's a lot of employment, and Mexico gains from this. So the long-term view is that we're committed, and we're here to grow, and we're showing tremendous success, and there's tremendous opportunity, right? And if the pandemic has shown us something, is that we have more demand. I mean, in the electronics industry sector, actually, our demand has risen. Production in Mexico is increasing. So it's like the goose with the golden eggs, right?
Yeah.
You got to take care of it. And if you ruin that, then it's short term, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think at the end of the day, we're all going to be sensible. We're going to voice our opinions, and then we're going to do what's best for the country. So I don't really think that it's it's an issue that's going to affect us in the long term. We're still investing, we're still growing, we're becoming more sophisticated, and I don't think that's going to end. My comments.
I agree with what all of you have said. As I said at the beginning, I think Mexico is mature. I think it's a survivor country. Lots of issues have come and gone, and they're gone. So that's a good thing, and we can look forward to a brighter future. My last comment before I turn it back over is that we will take this discussion and make it a 3-hour discussion on April 28th. We will plan a webinar, invite all of you to join it. So I hope you found this informative, as informative as I have. I learned a lot, and we'll be getting you out more information so we can learn more from gentlemen like the ones we had. Thank you, panelists. You did a great job. Thank you very much. I really appreciate what you have done here today. So thank you very much.